人類による一対一の勝負怠慢にございます。
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Danny here, and today I'm talking to you about Record of Ragnarok. So, Record of Ragnarok, or Shumatsu no Walkure, I think that's how it is a monthly manga from Comic Zenon. We saw a series like Shigehime that I talked about not too long ago. That's from there as well. And this published from 2017, currently ongoing with, I think it was 43 chapters at the time of this recording. And it is drawn by Aji Chika, and it is written by Takumi Fukui and Shinya Umemura. So this actually has two writers on this manga. That's a first. I've never really seen anything like that. Of course, there's the classic artist-writer duo. We see that a lot. But this is a first where we're having three people collaborate on one series. So let's go ahead and get into this, man. Record of Ragnarok, it starts off with a setting very similar to God of High School. I got a lot of vibes from this series. It is a world where all the gods exist at once. So you have Norse, you have Hindu, you have the Greeks, you have everybody here. And once every, it was like 1,000 or 10,000 years, they will have a meeting and determine the fate of humanity, whether or not they should be annihilated. And during this meeting, it was a unanimous decision to get rid of humanity. And as they were about to officialize it, here comes one of the Valkyries, Brunhilde, or is it Brunhild? And she opposes this and says there's actually a clause that you guys should probably do, and it's called Record of Ragnarok. And it is humanity's chance to fight back this decision by holding a tournament between the best of humanity versus the best of the gods. And whoever wins gets their decision. So if the humans win, they get to stick around. And if the gods win, well, all the humans are annihilated. You know, the gods are just like, this is absurd. That was just a silly law we put in there just for the laughs. And then, of course, she knew that gods are arrogant and push their buttons saying that they're cowards. They're afraid of the humans. That got him pissed off. He says, sure, why not? Let's go ahead and do this tournament. And that's where we go. It is the first to 5 wins, I believe. And it's the 9 versus 9. Again, very similar vibes to God of High School. Mainly because just the way the gods are, they're not as depicted as you would think. It's kind of their own take here, which I always appreciate. There's definitely like the anime version-esque, you could say, right? When you look at other characters of myth or culture that show up in manga and anime, they sort of have a certain way about them. More similar with God of High School is the fact that the humans are just absurdly strong. They have to use specific weapons to fight back the gods because mortal weapons cannot hurt them. And also getting some Drifter vibes as well. Drifters, if you remember, I talked about it a long time ago. And that was a series about this little arena in hell where iconic people throughout history, specifically in war, I guess, are all put together in this battlefield. And the reason I get the vibes from there is because that's the Hellsing mangaka. And just the facial expressions here and the way certain characters react, it feels like it's from that same person. The fighters that they pick was not exactly what I was expecting, because I thought, okay, well, what time period are they going to specifically? Like, what year is this? And what are the 9 individuals that are alive that they can pick? That's not the case. The case here is they're getting the peak of humanity throughout history. So they're just picking from every single time period, getting the strongest person from there, having them in the tournament. Which threw me off. I'm like, oh, so they're dead, but they could come in this tournament anyways. I felt like that was weird. But you get characters like Kojiro Sasaki, who fought Musashi. And then you have Adam from the Bible. And then you have Lubu from the Three Kingdoms. And then you get Jack the Ripper. And then there was this infamous sumo wrestler that showed up. That arc just ended right now where we're at. looking forward to who's coming up next. There's also some other characters coming in. Like, we have the full roster, and there were some interesting names in there. And then, of course, all the gods we could just easily recognize in there. I like the art. It definitely is striking, and you could feel the intensity. The way the choreography is pretty good. And the designs can get pretty crazy. It ranges from what you would expect for the gods to very interesting choices, like with Zeus, for example. And then, there is some of that edge that, of course, is in the manga anime trope when it comes to this stuff. Like Hercules, for example, he has like this weird tattoo going on and the way he looks. And I'm like, yeah, that's only here where you could see that. The writing here is something I'm not really feeling, just the way the structure is for the manga. Because the whole series is just going to be a tournament. And then once that's over, I'm pretty sure that's going to be it, unless we do something that's even bigger, like a retaliation if the humans win. Which, I mean, they kind of have to, right? Is what you would expect. And my main problem with this series is during the middle of fights, there's constant flashbacks between who's on the field. And that really sucks because there's not a lot of action in the beginning, and then you get a flashback with probably the human, and then a little more action, you get a flashback with the god, a little more action, back to the human, a little more action. We actually see contestants in the stands, and those are people that were close to whoever is fighting. So example, like Adam is out there in the field, and who's in the audience that's talking? It's his wife Eve and his 2 sons, right? And then Sasaki, the samurai, he's there, who's in the audience, all the samurai he's defeated, and of course with, Miyamoto Musashi. And it's a lot of back and forth, and then of course during the fights there's dialogue between the 2 characters. So when it comes to the way the story is structured, it's not well balanced, I don't think. There's definitely times during a fight where you pause and you do the flashbacks for sure, but the constant back and forth, like, it's all routine. It got to the point where round 3 and forward, I already knew where we were going to go. Like, okay, after this chapter, we're going to the flashback, right? Oh, there it is, of course. And then fight a little bit more and half a chapter, and then we're going to go more flashback stuff. Like, I don't mind because you want to understand these characters, because the interesting thing about this series is the gods are not one-to-one with what's already known. Hercules is a good example. We get his backstory, and it is not familiar at all. It's kind of its own unique thing. It is, eventually it is similar in certain aspects of what's going on, but it's essentially its own thing. And I feel like it's probably like that for a lot of these people. And then, of course, like, because it's a shonen fighting series, they have to add that extra anime-ness to it just to have the humans be on par with the gods when they fight. Because, the first thing I thought of, I'm like, man, like, okay, I get it. Like, they could get the strongest humans, but like, these are gods, their strengths are unparalleled, right? But the humans are equipped with the Valkyries that can turn themselves into weapons, and that gives them the edge. But just the raw strength alone helps with the humans as well. And it definitely goes for some great fights that hop in here. I think the round 2 is the hypest fight. I don't really want to do any spoilers of who fights who, but that's a really big fight. And another thing that sucks, another thing that I was up in the air with was the decisions of who fights who, because like, you want to root for certain characters, but because of who they're fighting, you kind of know that they're not going to win, which sucks because round 2, I think, is probably the best fight so far. There's only been 4 rounds. And, who's on the human side, you're like, oh, that guy's great. I want to see him win. But then you see who his opponent is, and you're just like, oh, I wasn't expecting this guy to show up this early, but it makes sense for this matchup. And then sadly, you already know the outcome because, either of those characters are too important to just die. It would have been interesting if it was going to be like a tournament structure to where there's rounds, but it's just going to be straight up like, okay, the first of 5 victories is going to win. Because I would like to see some of these characters come back for some rematches with these humans, because the further we go in, the more the gods have to get serious and recognize that, oh, humans are actually strong. Like, we haven't paid attention to them in a long time, and they've been like this for a while. And in between fights, our essential main character, she's the reason this is all happening, Brunhild, right, the main Valkyrie. Not a very likable character. It feels like they're trying too hard with her on how she reacts, her vulgar language. She gets, ecstatic when things go a certain way that nobody was expecting. It's just, I wasn't a big fan. But the other characters that show up, the humans are pretty good, and the gods are good too. Some of the interesting takes are cool, and the other ones I feel like it's just the same, more or less. Like, if you understand what this specific god's about, then you already kind of know how they're going to act based on like games or other media. Other than that, I am looking forward to exactly what we're going to be doing, because we did get the list. They just kind of get to pick who's going to be fighting who. So that's interesting. And right now, round 5 is starting. It was a nice surprise to end the cliffhanger on the chapter. So I'm interested to see where that fight's going. And then really what's going to be happening further down the line when it's going to be a neck and neck race of who's trying to win. Like, it's obvious that we're going to the last round. It's going to be 4 wins humans, 4 wins gods. And then the final round is going to be the one that determines it all. So I'm wondering what that's going to be. Again, I will say I was surprised to see the way the victories were going in here. It definitely was going the other way that I was expecting. But I think the buildup of the losses to the victories was pretty nice. The first fight, it started off pretty good right off the bat. We're just going in. It's to show how powerful the gods are, and then they slowly build up how strong the humans are. They may be powerful, but the overconfidence that the gods have gave them the upper hand. And there were some moments in the fights where I'm like, it's one of those last minute things that of course it was going to happen, because again, some of these characters are just too important to lose right now, narratively wise, because of basically the tier list of these people. I want to say we're going to finish the tournament, but it also can go the other way with what they want to do, because there are gods watching this that are kind of plotting their own thing. And I mainly heard about this from a friend who was recommending it, and I'm like, oh, this sounds pretty cool. I want to check it out. And then I heard the anime was coming out, so I'm like, okay, now I have to check it out for sure. So I think it's worth the read. You're here for the fights and for who's fighting specifically, because you want to see the matchups. I think those are the cool ones, But I will add as well that there is downtime between the rounds and things can happen, and we're introduced to more characters. It bothers me the way they introduce the characters' backstory so we can understand them more. But we bumped into some characters that haven't had their introduction yet, like with the flashbacks, but we just get to see how they are now. And I think I like that more, because you get a feeling of how they're going to fight and how they're going to act in those matches. I think that's better written than just going through the constant flashbacks, because Jack the Ripper, for example, he had like 2 or 3 flashbacks. It was kind of crazy. Well, he has the 2 flashbacks, and then there's somebody in the stands that's also commenting it, that kind of ties it all up together. And that just kind of, again, it feels like it's trying to fill time, even though this is a monthly manga. And I have to say, the action does last a good while. It's impressive how long they could keep the fights going in here. But by adding the flashbacks for the gods and the humans, it feels like it's just a stretch. There's definitely moments when you can do it, and I think they just do it a little too much here. But what do you guys think? Is it all right for the flashback stuff? Or should we just get more action in here and then find the appropriate times? And are you enjoying the series? Are you looking forward to the anime? I would like to know. And of course, we could talk about it on the next episode. And you can email us at universepodcast@gmail.com. Again, just let us know your questions or comments. And then you can follow us on social media at universepodcast, and we'll let you know when those episodes drop. So thanks, guys, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Yo. It's like a war between two demigods and one war machine. I urinated water an hour after they poisoned me. Looked up morbidly, waiting for the moment to seize so we could kill the greatest of opponents I had. Lionheart and Cloud, ultimate weapon with verse Sephiroth, they weren't awful effective. I wrote and bare knuckle papyrus with my right fist, setting fire to the oil with only a light grip. I told Barrett and Keeney-Yas to blast away Valentine, the one that had the cake, began to aim. Every bullet was deflected or dodged, so I called Quetzalcoatl the god to do his job, but no avail. Ragnarok wasn't going well. Get the Valkyries out of Valhalla or go to hell. Thor and Cloud fought the Serpent of Midgard. Loki teams up with Shinra when shit starts. Still battling, been here devoted for 10 years. Beside Fenrir and Odin, I split clear the ocean. One cut of my limit break. Lion-hearted looking for legions I can intimidate. Y'all 10, I crumbled them. Didn't spare one of them. Blessed with the strength of 100 men. Just for this, flaming arrows rained upon the battleground. War cries, swords, and shields clash with clamor sounds. Full effect, the melee of Ragnarok. Cloud cut the ground and shattered rock with the aftershock. Faraga, the frost giants incinerate. Then summon Shiva and everybody'll dissipate. I've been great, my gun blade will penetrate anybody's flesh and put their heart on a dinner plate. But Lamb Guard and sword play